Here we are with the 97 Dodge Ram van. This thing has been a bucking project. Right now we're dealing with the issue of smoke coming out, white smoke coming out of my tailpipe, of white smoke coming out of pretty much everywhere on this thing. You can open up the spark plugs, you got smoke coming out of there. You got a lot of back pressure on the system. Radiator cap keeps blowing. Take the cap off, coolant's flushing out of it. You don't feel coolant flushing through this system. I don't know if my freaking water pump or radiator got clogged, causing my issue. So I will be replacing that as well. But right now, we got a big project ahead of us. We're going to pretty much take the cover off the engine like we have. No, the door's locked. But we're going to take the cover off and we're just going to start powering through the disassembly of this engine. So as of right now, we're going to pull the spark plugs out. Once we get the spark plugs out, we're going to pull the wires out of the way. We're going to start labeling everything. You're going to get some Scotch tape and a marker, and you're going to label every bolt, every piece of like metal parts, anything that comes off this thing. We're going to mark it, and we're going to organize everything. And because we're going to have to make sure that all the electrical goes where it's supposed to go, everything is going where it's supposed to go. And the reason why I know it's a blown head gasket is I got a combustion leak tester. Goes on top of your radiator, you get the fluid. Combustion gases go into it, turns the fluid that you put in there from blue to yellow, which is what happened. Not only that, but I was checking my compression on my engine. Each cylinder is roughly around 100. You got two cylinders, probably like 115. And then I've got my cylinder 4 is at around 80. So we're gonna pull this whole thing apart and hopefully the engine's still good and it's just the gaskets. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So we went ahead, have the spark plugs pulled out. Spark plug wires are all labeled. And in case you don't know, engine facing from the front, you got the passenger side engine, it's going to be 2, 4, and 6, and driver side is going to be 1, 3, and 5. But once you take those spark plugs and everything out, next thing you're going to do is these little spark plug sleeves right here. We're just going to grab them with some pliers and pull and wiggle. Do that for each one. Alright, next thing we're going to do is, I'm not going to film it because I already took off one side over here, but basically you got your heat shields. Right here you've got bolts right underneath, and take those off. Sometimes there's a nut on the bottom, you got to hold on to it. You can like do it through here, if not you can go underneath. Have someone help you, whatever it is. Did everything by myself so far, so it's not too bad. But we're going to take these heat shields off. Once I get the heat shields off, we're just going to do top from bottom. So I'm just kind of getting everything out of the way. I'm going to unplug the battery. We're going to drain the coolant. But next, heat shield, we're going to get all the electrical and all of the vacuum lines all moved out of the way and get this engine cleared up a little bit so we can get started. So I'm gonna go ahead and unplug the battery and take this heat shield off, and we'll pick back up. So however you guys want to mark your things like this, I'm just gonna go ahead and either put shapes or numbers on stuff. So I'm gonna put one on here and then one on the connector. That way when I go to put everything back together, it's going to fit. I know where everything's gonna go, and I'm gonna have to fight it. So let's go ahead and get all the electrical out of the way and unplug everything and see if we can't move this wire harness back. So we're gonna go ahead and put numbers on each of these connectors and the sensors and everything they go to. So with everything mostly numbered, I go ahead and just start taking apart little things. Put this all apart here. I'm gonna go ahead and alright, so that's disconnected, and we can now slowly start to move some stuff out of the way. This is going to be our fuel line right here. So this one, I'm going to make sure everything's disconnected before, like your electrical battery and like all that stuff, so we don't have fire or spark or anything like that. Nothing crazy happening. But before we take that off, there's a vacuum line right here. This little clamp. It's hard to do with one hand. Alright, we're going to pause this. So as you start to take everything off, just remember you're going to have grounds in different places. Like right here I have a ground, and I'm sure somewhere else I've got a ground over here. But we're going to always make sure that we're taking apart and being careful. So let's go ahead, we'll get that ground taken off, and we'll start to get this wire moved up. But I think I've got everything unplugged. I think that the alternator right here needs to come unplugged. And then, you know, there's this wire right here for the coil that needs to come off. You just pretty much want to go through and make sure, you know, you're taking off everything before you start to tug and pull on things. So let's go ahead and continue. I'll get this marked up. And let's go. We have the ground taken off, 2 bolts. Now we're going to do our gas line to give us some space, because we're going to remove the gas lines. I'm going to drain the coolant because all this stuff needs to come off. We're going to pull the alternator and stuff off. So right now I'm putting all this underneath. It's going to catch whatever comes out. And basically we're going to pinch on both sides, and it should just come right off like that. And as you can see, there's still gas in the line. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap that up. That way, if there is more gas in it, our towel will catch it and it won't hopefully make too much of a fire hazard for us. But we're also gonna go down there and soak up some of that we can. So let's go ahead and try to drain it a little bit. And I'll just set them off to the side like so. Now we got a little bit more space to work with as far as everything here. We're gonna go ahead and remove our bracket right here. And then for these, we have this line. Should just kind of pop forward. Like that. And that's your throttle. Now your throttle is held on to these little clips right here. Sometimes it's easier to get a tool to push down and out. And the same thing underneath. But you guys get the idea. So as we take out bolts, like so, I'm gonna hang on to these washers, make sure they don't lose them and drop them. And now we're just gonna go ahead and bolt these back to where they go. Just stick them in just a little bit. It's easier to do this and not lose track of things. And then when we get our fuel line off, I'll put this last one back. But until then, I'll just set it in there for now, that way we don't lose track of it. Now, we got most of that out of the way. Next is going to be the lines here. Same way with this one, it just clips right out. You come down to here, and you've got these, should be now this one, it does the same thing as the last one did. So right here on the back side, it might be easier if you had some pliers to do it, but you can do the same way. You just pull it back like this, it should pop right out. And then this one, I think, just pull straight out. So we're gonna go ahead and get these pulled off. Everything disconnected there, we're able to pull off to the side our wire harness, mostly off. We have a couple bolts back here that are holding on for the grounds. We're gonna go ahead and possibly take those off, and then this hose right here is kind of stopping us from really pulling it through. So we're gonna go around to the front of the engine. So we've got these guys here. What we'll probably end up doing, honestly, is I'll probably take these off and we'll pull it straight through. So we're gonna get these marked up as well. So you got these connectors here. We're gonna get these all marked. We'll get these marked, these ordered up and marked. And then once we do all that, we'll go ahead and pull this all the way through and then just like lay it across probably under the seat. If we're not gonna do that, we'll probably go underneath and disconnect everything as well. And we'll probably end up pulling the whole harness out, just because, just double check things, make sure the harness is good. But now, as we continue, we're gonna pull off our transmission dipstick tube. I already got the oil one off, and we're also going to disconnect this guy. We don't technically have to because he just kind of comes off like that. After we do that, we're going to mark everybody here. So this all gets marked up and lined up. You may have seen some of my other videos on my Toyota where I was doing our drive shaft, propeller shaft, whatever you want to call it. But that comes off and you mark everything so everything lines up when you put it back on. So this needs to be like boom, boom, boom. So we're going to go ahead and clean up the engine right there and get that marked off right. And yeah, so mostly we're getting there. Next we're going to tackle the hoses here and probably get the alternator and stuff taken off if we need to. I'm going to try and go through and see what we can do, but as of that, we're just going to keep continuing on and see how much of this we can pull off and pull out of the way. So let's go ahead and get our wires marked up into the front, and once we get those all marked up, we're going to go ahead and pull this off and pull it. We are going to pull it through this way and pull it off to the side. So let's go ahead and get that done. Went ahead and took some marker and marked up my distributor so I can get everything lined back up correctly, whatever I need to take off and do everything. And so we're going to go ahead and take off this distributor. And then after we get that off, we'll do the fuel line next. And we'll pick up. So let's go ahead and take off this bolt right here. And that bolt should come right off, and that should open up your distributor to come off. Let me find the right wrench. I got my 1/2 inch. Just gonna loosen that. Oh, break this fucking sensor. Come right out. Now that takes off that, and you see that starts to move. And we're gonna go ahead and lift it all out. Obviously that's not all we've done. So, oh, that fucking falls right out. So we've got that pulled out now. And we're gonna go set this off where we're storing everything. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put a shop rag or some paper towels in here to get that all fucking blocked off so nothing happens. So with that distributor off, because then we're gonna take our towel so it's not dirty. So I'm just gonna set my shop rag like this. That way no contaminants get in my engine. Next, it's gonna be simple. We're gonna take off this guy right here. I'm gonna find the right. Sorry about the movement. That looks about right. So we're gonna see how hard this is using my small ratchet. Yeah, so if you guys need more force behind it, more leverage, you get better angle on it. So we're gonna see if this works with our breaker bar. So we went ahead and took our breaker bar and loosened everything. So now our little ratchet should get everything the rest of the way, or at least enough to where we can do it by hand. Now this stuff isn't really, to me, like the worst part. It's when you actually start taking like the top cylinder head and this intake valve, I'm sorry, this intake head right here. So it's like once we get into like these whole areas, it's kind of like where everything starts to break really down. And that's when we'll start to see what gaskets have blown. Because you'll be able to see oil seepage or like coolant or whatever your issue is that's going on. Because I'm also having coolant inside of my oil. So like I did took my valve covers off, and when I took my valve covers off, that's where I noticed my oil was looking very like brownish and was very runny. And from there I just kind of started to get worried about this gasket thing. And then I did all the tests, compression tests, and I did the combustion leak down test, and everything said yes. So now we're just gonna go from here. So again, this is the main part, that one of the main parts that come off. So we got the bolts all the way around here, and we'll get to that. We still got to get our fuel rail off. Once we get our fuel rail off, then we've got to move on to, you know, kind of getting everything else out of the way. Take these covers off, expose the valves and the rocker arms, and then there's going to be bolts on the inside of here that help hold down these heads. So let's go ahead and keep going. So we got some of these already started, so we're going to keep going. So you can see I'm using a 1/2 inch still. This one, remember, we already took off, so we're going to go ahead and set this off to the side. If you have a magnet tray, even better. Alright, so with this, we're just going to go ahead and we got to be lightly unsettling everything so we can like move things around, because everything's on its gaskets. And we have this one right here. This kind of leaves you with options limited on this side. So we're going to go ahead and pop this off. And keep that going. So again, we're going to take our 1/2 inch here, take this last bolt off. I'm going to find it underneath that piece that we just removed. Boom. Now we can go ahead and reattach these two pieces together with that and the nut that we have. So let's go ahead and reattach these two pieces really quick. Now to get the fuel rail out, it's easy just to kind of twist these around a little bit and break that seal that it kind of gets with that gasket. And then as you do that, this should pull out. And just, if they don't really pull out, you can always twist and pull with them a little bit. So I got this side out relatively easy using both hands. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to this side. Try to get these ones out real quick. Sorry about that. Got the fuel rail out. As you see, still got some fuel on it. Shouldn't be dumping on the ground though. So we're gonna go ahead and go put that in a bucket. But pretty much before we put this back in, we're gonna inspect our fuel injectors, see if they're dirty, broken, anything's wrong with them, but we're going to go ahead and get this emptied out into a bucket and pick back up. So we went ahead already and took off our bolt right here for our transmission dipstick. Now we are going to take off the bolt that's down here, if this is even the right size, which I don't believe it is. So, but you have a bolt right down here as well. We're going to go ahead and take that off really quick. So as we take out our dipstick, before we do anything, you see how dirty it is down there? Just going to take a wire brush and I'm going to clean up around there really quick. That way we don't get any contaminants into our transmission. All that's very important. Alright, so as you can see, I've got the alternator moved over. It's just taking off the bolt that goes right here and loosening this one right here. You can move it back and forth. You can take off the main wire here if you need to and take actually like the whole unit out. We will see if we need to do that though. And as we move over, we have our thermostat housing, 2 bolts on each side. As you can see, that's going to come off and it's going to have our thermostat on inside. And then when that comes out, it's just another hole to plug up, but you'll notice that there's a lot of coolant inside the engine still, so if we need to drain it from the bottom, we can, which we probably will. Try to drain it the best we can. If not, there's going to be a bunch of coolant that comes out on these cylinder heads and everything, so we'll see if we want to do that and drain what we're going to drain it into. And then from there, we're going to see if we have to take off our AC compressor. I don't believe we can't. We have to, but I'm gonna get in there with the light and actually check everything out. And then from there, we're gonna go ahead and put this bolt back inside the hole it came from, because it will just screw right into it. And if not, we're gonna put tape around it and mark it and tell it on the tape of where it goes and what the bolt does. But as you can see, we're getting down to the main part here. We're going to take off these valve covers here, expose our valves. We're going to check our rocker arms and check everything out, see how there's play and see how everything's moving around. And then from there, we'll go over the last few steps, check everything out, make sure we got all of our main stuff off, and then see where we can go from there. Now, another thing I'm going to go over really quick before we get too far is our exhaust valves. Intake and our outtake all need to be hit with some type of bolt remover. As you can see, this one's not that great. It's almost gone with the pressure, but it's like a full fucking can. But this stuff needs to be hit, because if you do not hit this stuff, it will probably break on you. So we're gonna hit it early and let it soak in for a while we're doing stuff, so it can really penetrate into where we're trying to get it. As you can see, these ones are kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know if you can see that. We're trying to get it down there on this bolt. Again, we're gonna hit these other ones and just keep going along. And then the same thing right here, we're gonna want to hit this part. These are probably gonna have to come off as well, so we just want to hit everything. So go around, hit all your exhaust bolts, because they rust really easily. They break even easier. So next what we're doing is we're going to take out all these bolts here. Don't use the gun unless you've already kind of loosened everything, and I've already taken these bolts off earlier yesterday when I was taking a look at everything on here. So these bolts are all loosened already. So if you have not done this, then go ahead and loosen them first before you hit it with the gun. And from there, we're going to get these covers pulled off really quick. So let's go ahead and pick back up in a second. If you have an air compressor or anything like that, it makes it easier to get all this dirt and debris out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and hook up mine, and we're going to spray all this off. If you don't have one, just do your best to kind of wipe off all the things that can fall into the engine as you pull off your valve covers and your heads. The least amount of shit we get inside this engine, the least amount of work we have to do to try and clean it out. So let's go ahead, get these bolts put in a nice box and marked what they are, where they go. And we're going to get the air compressor hooked up. We're going to spray this all down really quick, and we're going to pull back. So we got one valve cover. As you can see, we have some what looks like coolant mixture in here. So, sucks, but I think it is on this side anyways. And there's a lot of buildup in here. So we're going to get this all pulled off. After we pull off the cover, I think we'll start with taking off the manifold here, and once we get that manifold off, we'll start taking off these. And when we take these off, we need to make sure we're putting these in an order of how they come off, because they need to go back where they came from. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that. And before I do that, I'm going to check my valve clearance. If you have a valve clearance tool, it's just like little pieces of metal that check the thickness between here and the rocker arms and the gaps and everything. So I'm going to personally do that. You don't have to. But we're going to go through and check everything, make sure, see how everything fits. And make sure everything is tight. So you're just going to shake everything like this. I'll make sure nothing is loose, nothing has play, there's no broken springs, everything looks good. And we're going to do the same thing for the other side. And from there, we'll get the manifold taken off. And once we get the manifold taken off, we'll start looking into taking off our cylinder heads. So let's get down to it. But before all that, before I forget, let's take that guy off. So we're going to take off these two bolts in there. Once we get those two bolts off, they should just pull right out. And then we're going to keep our thermostat inside so nothing really falls inside of there. So with that all fixed up out of the way, we got the thermostat off, everything's moved. We're going to go ahead and take our exhaust manifolds off first. So to get the exhaust manifolds off, we're going to find me 13, I bet it is. I bet it is. 13 it is. So we're going to hit it with the 13, and we're going to be very careful. I already hit the bolts with some bolt remover earlier, so if we need to use it again, don't be afraid to. Be very gentle with this and use a lot of leverage. So we're going to use a big long pole to go with this where we can, and we're going to try to do this the best and easiest we can, because we don't want to break bolts off. It's very easy to break bolts off in here, and it's very hard to get them out. So let's see if I can't get some of this started for you. And when you start taking off these bolts, for any of the manifolds, you want to take them off in the sequence that you got to put them on. So it goes like this. Sorry about that. So again, you go from one end to the other end, one end to the other end. You want to take them off evenly and make sure you don't crack or break anything as you do it. So we're going to get these started. I got this started, but first I'm going to detach it from here a little bit because there is some pressure from this and it might yank it and scratch the surface. So we're going to go ahead and loosen these bottom ones here first, and then the breaker bar did work. I was able to get these bolts off fairly easily. So let's go ahead and continue on. I'm gonna get these bolts on the bottom taken off, and we'll pick back up right when we're getting ready to take this manifold off. All right, so we got the bracket off down there. Now we're gonna go ahead and get this part done. So again, the longer the bar, the more leverage you have. Most likely you're gonna break a bolt or something. So now we've got all the bolts loose. We're gonna go ahead and finish the rest of the way taking this off. And once we get this exhaust manifold off, this should just pull right off really easily. We've got these studs right here that go in to help guide it in. So let's go ahead and pull this off, and we'll set it off to the side. All right, so we have our exhaust manifold on our passenger side off. We're gonna get over to the other side and do that when we're ready to do it. But as you can tell, everything is off, nice and done. We're gonna pull off the head and obviously clean all of that. So right now, pretty much everything is almost ready to go. We're gonna pull off these here, and remember, they're gonna go back on the way they came off. So they need to go off exactly the way they look right now. So you can put them in styrofoam, you can put them in cardboard, you can lay them out, but they need to stay in order. That is very important. So let's go ahead and get these rocker arms taken off. All right. I've been taking care of some other things as I've been making this video, so I'm going throughout my day longer than it should take this to do. I have a designated area set up for this. You'll notice a lot of gunk in my engine. This is definitely going to get cleaned out. Getting a lot of gunk in here. So basically, we're going to take the rocker arm, take the bolt out like so. Should just pull right up. You can see this is together. Just kind of giving you an idea that taking these off, you just kind of go and just fucking get it. And then these pull off, and then as you pull it out, the rods, you hang on to them because they come out with it. And now I'm gonna go put this in the back. These are gonna get all cleaned up, make sure everything's good. You can see it's dirty. So let's go ahead and continue taking off these rocker arms, but at the same time we're gonna make sure that they do not get mixed up and they stay in order. So we are here at the point of removing our head. And first off, we're going to do our manifold here. Manifold is all going to be done center out like this when you tighten it, and we will not be doing that, so we'll be doing the reverse this time. So to take the heads off of these, you go in reverse. So instead of going center out, we're going to go from outside in. So like this is how it's going to be done. Slowly across, slowly across. So let's go ahead, get set up, and we'll get started right now. One thing I do know that we'll have to take off is our AC compressor, because we have a bolt underneath there that needs to come off. So that's going to be these two bolts here, and then these two bolts there as well. Once those come off, the AC compressor should just pull right out. And I have a new one of an AC compressor, so I might remove all this and get the new one put in. So let's go ahead and pull these two bolts, remaining two bolts out, and we'll just get this AC compressor moved out of the way. So we got these bolts, the mounting bolts off. We got ahead of ourselves and loosened up our bolts here for our lines, and just be aware that they are pressurized lines and everything, so when you start to undo them, they start to hiss. So just very lightly get one started. As it starts to go, you'll see that the line starts to spray and hiss, so just back away from it as it starts to do that. We're just draining the pressure in the system. So all we're doing is just draining the pressure out of the system. With the system evacuated of all of system's evacuated. We got all the refrigerant out, all the pressure out. So now we're able to take off these bolts the rest of the way. And then these lines should just slide right over. Just gonna keep our bolts, hang on to them. And with that undone, we already have the harness that's right here. Maybe you can see it right there, unplugged. So with that harness unplugged and the refrigerant lines are off, we should be able to just slide our, yep, looks like it. We should just be able to slide our old air compressor out and get ready the new one for installation. So we got our AC compressor out of the way. You can see the mounting bolt right here. I am personally probably going to take off my support bracket here that the alternator and AC compressor stay on, because there is a hose right here that goes right here, and I don't know if this hose is leaking, damaged, swollen, needs to be replaced, because I know my other hoses do. So we're just going to go ahead and pull this bracket off and check that hose. But as far as anything else goes, as you guys see, we have our head ready to be disassembled. Now, again, we're going to take these bolts off one side and then to the other side, and then we're going to work our way across and work our way in. So let's just go ahead and start getting some bolts loosened, and and we'll pick up here in a second. So we got the back bracket off. Bolts will have to come out of that regardless. Same with right here. Our tensioner and everything right there is probably gonna come off because of the heads. And same thing over here. If there's anything left connected to that side, will all have to come off as well. So we're gonna get there, but for now, we've got our bolts shown here, and we're gonna take these, loosen these ones, then loosen the back ones, and then move our way in. So again, we're going to, I've already kind of got these ones loosened, the first couple. And so like this, and then when I come back over here to these bolts here, and we're going to get that started. This one right here I did not get started, so this one I'm gonna go ahead and not fuck the bolt head up, that's for sure. But yeah, you're kind of getting the idea of it. It's hard to do with one hand in film. Don't know what happened to my camera tripod, but there we go. We're trying to do what we can for you. Alright. Now again, come down here. And we're just going to continue to loosen up the next row in. And this one's already had loosened a little bit. Now, again, we're going to get this one here. That's already got. And then keep moving our way in until we get the head loose and pulled off. Remember, as you take out these bolts of any of these heads, we will be replacing them, so do not put them back. They always need to be replaced. They get worn out, brittle from the heating of the engine and everything, so when you put them back in and you try to torque them down the spec, they usually snap. So always replace your bolts. And on top of that, when you're taking out bolts, if you're going to put them back in or replace them, always keep them in order of where they came out in the engine, in case there are some that are different lengths. These are all the same lengths, but always keep that in mind when removing things. So now we've got all the bolt heads taken out though. We've got our head right here, and we're just gonna give it a few good tugs, and that's gonna be grabbing it from like here, and then probably grabbing it from right here or so, and rocking it back and forth till it starts to come off. So let's go ahead and just get this removed. And now if you're having a hard time getting this to unseal from the sealant that's on here plus the gaskets and everything, you can get a rubber mallet and just give it a few light taps on the points right here. Just a few light ones. You don't need to go anything crazy hard or anything like that. Just lightly tap it to give it some shock to help remove it. So we're going to go ahead and try that out now. And it looks like this hose here needs to come off. So as soon as we get that hose off, we've got it knocked loose, separated from the seal and the gasket and everything, and it's getting ready to pull right off. So let's go ahead and get that hose removed from there. And when we get that one removed, we should be able to pull the head right off. It's not that heavy. You should be able to do it by yourself. Just so you guys can see, this is the head. I've got it upside down right now. We're going to check the gaskets areas here in a second. See what broke, if any, on that side. This is going to be our open intake manifold area. Now, just go through and check your gasket areas and see if anything look like it failed. We're gonna get a rag and put it underneath here because I don't want that falling through. But so far, nothing too crazy in this area, it looks like. Not that I noticed, at least. So it's good, at least. It looks like the intake manifold held. Pretty sure. So next is going to be our valve heads. So let's get this area cleaned up a little bit from like the dirt and debris that came off with the head, and then we'll get ready for the next part. So next we're going to be taking off the heads. To do so, we have a bracket right here. Obviously it's connected on one of our head bolts, and then our belt tensioner as well. Some bolt looks like it's hanging off from the head, so we're gonna have to get that removed. And then when you come over here, it looks like parts of the power steering pump are also held on to the other side of the head. So we're gonna have to go ahead and get these parts removed in order to get these heads fully off. So let's go ahead and start removing our bracket, our belt tensioner, and the bolts for the power steering pump on the head only. And then once we get that all removed, we'll be able to move on to the next part. So we went ahead and got the bolts broken loose. Again, do it in the reverse sequence of it that you put it on, which is outside in. So we go here, this side, and then here, and then here, and that should loosen the head. And once we get that all done, we're gonna start taking the bolts off after everything is loose. So we're gonna continue to kind of back them out slowly, and then there is still coolant in the block. I never drained the block, unfortunately, so we're gonna have to put a pan underneath and catch the coolant as we remove the head. But let's go ahead and break the seal right here on the bottom. That way we can at least get the coolant to leak out from here. So we're gonna get our catch pan and get that done. Now, same way we did with our rubber mallet with the intake, he's just gonna find a point that's not like breakable or anything like that, and we're just gonna light taps like so. Light taps. That'll help break the seal a little bit, start getting us to drain. So we got the head ready to be pulled off. We broke the gasket and seal and everything. Drained out the rest of the coolant that was inside of here. So we're going to get everything all cleaned up. Any coolant that's left over in the engine bay or anything like that. So let's go ahead and get this head removed and set somewhere nice in the back of the van. So this is the cover. The bolts go right here and right here, and then 1, 2, 1, 2, and then from there we take it off and it just pops right out from the cover right here. And then we got the fan blade, and the bolts are going to be on the back of here that we're going to remove. And we're going to be doing that with our wrenches. So we went ahead and loosened the bolts behind the fan. And as you see, there's the 4 bolts that holds the fan on itself. And then right here, I went ahead and put vice grips here and held that in place that way while I took a wrench and knocked that loose. So we've got that loose up now, and with this off, it should just twist off as you see. And then this makes it to where we have some easier access to our water pump. And then we can also remove our fan blade because it comes off from the bolt area. So now we can get that removed and everything. So let's go ahead and get this taken off, put on the new water pump and fan clutch, and we'll pick up from there. Now with that removed, we have these bolts here that we're going to go ahead and go around and take off of the water pump. And with that fan blade out of the way, just makes it a lot easier to get to these other bolts here. And then also this inlet tube right here needs to come out. So once we pull this and get this off, we'll see how this inlet tube comes out. So let's go ahead and do that and get our radiator hose removed from there as well. So we went ahead and got the bolts loose all the way around, and you're just going to take your rubber mallet and just give it a few whacks on the pulley until it separates, like so. And from there we're just going to remove the bolts the rest of the way and get this inlet tube pulled off. We'll remove this hose and everything and then add that onto the new one. So let's go ahead and get these bolts removed and pull this old water pump off. So we have the water pump removed. We went ahead and kept track of where bolts go where. So we have 2 long bolts. They're going to go right here, top and bottom. 2 long bolts to go top and bottom. We have a short bolt here. That bolt's going to go in the center. And we also have 2 other short bolts. They're going to go right there. Now with all that removed, we're going to go ahead and finish cleaning this. So take a razor blade and we're going to go through and just kind of clean up the surface where our gasket's going to go. Get some rubbing alcohol and some paper towels and rags so we can clean it up. But razor blades are good. Just be careful you don't scratch or make any things that are going to mess this up. So let's go ahead and get this all cleaned up. And then once we're done with that, we'll get these gaskets put on and get this water pump put on. We have the surface cleaned now. You're going to use paint thinner or acetone. I use a razor blade to get the chunks, hard parts of the gasket off. And I use the acetone to go through and soak it and clean it and wipe it down. I still got a couple more spots to really hit, but it's mostly all the way smooth now. Those black spots on there are just stains on the metal, but I'm going to go through and give it a couple more scrapes, acetone. You can use wire brushes, dish wire brushes, as long as it's not an aluminum block. You shouldn't scratch it up and cause too much damage. As you can see, I've been using wire brushes and everything in the blocks. Pretty fine. I think the only things I've got in there are a couple nicks from the razor blade, but those could be smoothed out. So we're going to go ahead, finish cleaning this off, and then we're going to clean out the debris from inside of the water pump area. And then when we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and get these gaskets put on and get the water pump started. So with our gasket cleaned, we can move on to fan, which is just right here. We're going to be moving these blades over to our new pump. We've got the replacement, so we're going to go ahead, get the replacement put on there and get the pump all set up and everything. So let's go ahead and grab everything. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this all set up. And we have that set up there. Let's get our bolts in. Alright, we're going in now. We're going to start them off hand tight. And when we put these on, we're not going to tighten them down crazily. Just, you know, just give it a little snug. If you want to look up the foot-pounds and everything for your torque, probably the best idea always to follow that. But I will not, because this is a personal vehicle of mine, so it doesn't bother me none. But we're going to go ahead, we're going to get this attached, make sure it's good on there nicely. And once that's done, we'll attach this whole piece to the new water pump after we get the pump on. Alright, we have this. Oops, this all together now. Tightened it a good hand tight, nothing too crazy. Next is our pump, which I have here. Let's go ahead and get this set up and ready. We're going to put our inlet tube right there. We're going to back this piece out. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Now in our water pump kit, you'll see on here there is, on this side, sorry, little guy right there. We're gonna pop him out with the screwdriver, and then the kit comes with a new one, which is right here. And we're just gonna get this one out with the screwdriver, and then we're gonna put the new one right in there. There we go. New piece is on. Now this is going to go into our inlet tube, which is on this side. And put it in like so, because this will get bolted down with it. And we're just going to push this down into place. And after we push that down into place, we're going to get ready to take this off, but only when we are ready to put the gasket on and mount everything. So we're going to go ahead and clean up this side. I'm going to clean up the other side of the engine that we just did. And as soon as we get this all nice and cleaned, we'll get ready to mount it. So remember when we had to do the bolts and we had remembered which bolt went where? Well, this part comes into that because we're going to put our gasket on here, and then we're going to set this to the surface of here, and we're going to get 2 bolts started and get them at least halfway, if not a little bit more. That way we can get the gasket in place and set, and then from there we can get everything put onto here and every bolt put on and kind of get it start mounting and surfaced, and then I will go through the tightening sequence of the bolts to make sure that we get this flush and nice. And then I will show you the foot-pounds of this, because things with gaskets like oil pans, water pumps, you know, anything just to down to your head gaskets and everything, it's very important to do it by the foot-pounds, inch-pounds, whatever it's asking for, because you can crack the engine block, you can mess things up, you can ruin the gasket, it can get too tight and leak, and we just want to make sure we do it right the first time. So let's go ahead and make sure this is all set up right, and we'll get it mounted. So here we are with the gasket we're about to put on. Let's hope to God we can do this right the first time. The inlet tube will go to the driver's side of the engine, as the coolant hose port will go down towards the passenger side. And I think there's already NEC stuff on here, but I'm going to go ahead and add some of my own just in case. Alright, so I took the second to add that on. Try my best to do this without getting everything in the way, but let's see how this goes. Try not to touch my gasket surface. And I don't think I'm lining up right. 1 second. So, gasket's almost put on. Gaskets are always really annoying. That looks like we could be set. Alright. Sorry about the angle on the camera and everything. It's a little shot. But let's go ahead and get the rest of these bolts put on. I'll continue to add the NECs to our threads. And we're going to make sure that our gasket is lining up as it should. Sweet. The gasket should be good and lined up. I will not tighten anything down though until I actually can verify that the gasket is nice and set comfortably without any issues, because I don't want to take it off and have to deal with anything. Find our hole. All right, sorry for the delay, but now we have all the bolts on, and now we're gonna hand tighten them. And as soon as we get them all set, hand tightened, we're gonna double check our gasket. Like I said earlier, we're gonna make sure that's all set nice. And then once that's done, we're gonna make sure that we're not cross-threading anything. And we're just gonna take it really easy on these bolts, putting them in. Because again, we're going to make sure that we are not cross-threading. You do not want to cross-thread these. And once you get everything down, hand tightened, then I'll go through the bolt sequence, which is right now. So here is the water pump, just about to be fully installed. Right now we are getting ready to torque it down to 30 foot-pounds, and there is no real pattern to doing this. It's just going to be tightening it. And we're just going to continue around until we have it torqued down all the way around to 30 foot-pounds. And with that, we're going to go ahead and attach our heater in, not our heater inlet tube, our water pump bypass hose. Here's our inlet tube, our radiator hose. Those will all go back on. And then as soon as we get this bolt down, we'll do the fan next. Next, we're going to have our new fan, our fan clutch, and then that's just going to simply turned on like so. So we're gonna use the wheel there to get that all set up like that. And we're gonna about need to use two hands right now, so I'm gonna do this like that, and we're gonna tighten that real tight. So let's go ahead and get that started and finished right there. We have our fan on and had it tightened the same way we took it off. I just clamped right here, held on to it, and just pulled back and forth, got it tight. And so everything's down to spec. And with this, you can double check all your work if you would like. We're gonna go ahead and call this video done. We're gonna connect the hoses back, get the fan shroud back on, but obviously we're gonna finish a whole edit video first before we do that. So thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions or anything, if you guys like the video, comment, like it, share it, subscribe. So here we have our cylinder heads as well. Aside from the gaskets on the block of the engine that we're going to be cleaning, we have to be cleaning all of this as well. And right here I have a broken bolt, which is a really nice opportunity to be able to fix that while I have this out of the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that while I have the chance and opportunity. And aside from that, we're also going to be cleaning everything, so all this sludge in the engine, you know, all that stuff needs to come out. And also, aside from that, we're going to be using our spring compressor to take these off so we can change out our valve seals, because that's part of our head gasket kit set. And so we're going to even go over that. So we're going to get this all cleaned up. We're going to get the engine block all cleaned up. And when we get all this done and everything is nice and clean and shiny and looks fantastic and is all ready, and we're not going to lose track of which cylinder head goes to which side, then we're going to get started. So let's go ahead and get this all cleaned up, and we'll pick up with each other as soon as we're done. So right here we have valve stems. We're going to be doing the valve stem seals, which is using one of these guys, but these have been on here for a while, so we have to break the seal, which is just taking this and doing as such. When we do that, it sets it up to where these are able to come loose, because they get a little stuck to the inside because they're wedged down inside of there. So basically what we're going to do, you can take it off with this if you hit it hard enough. We're not going to do that today. So what we're going to do, you're going to take your compressing tool, put it on the lowest spring that is available. Right about there. Your compressing spring, so we are going to double check and make sure it is on nice and tight. You don't want this thing flying off at 1,000 miles an hour on us. And then we're going to slowly and carefully compress our spring. Just need a few turns, doesn't need too much. I've got my little magnet that I'll be using for this. I could use some more. Start to compress. So we can push down on it a little bit, give it some wiggles. there should be good enough. And eventually he'll be able to get this. Like I said, we are pretty stuck in here, so sometimes I just gotta encourage it a little bit. There we go. That's one. Put it on our rag. Two. Now with that, we're going to keep this on our spring. Pull it off to the side. Now we have our valve stem exposed. We don't have the proper clamp to do that, so I'm just going to take something light, something not crazy. Give it a couple twists and pulls. Comes right out. Knock that off. I am going to clean it with a wire brush. That way we get a nice even seal. And that looks like it. Now let's give this guy a little brushing. Lightly brush this guy. He's just got some deposits on him and everything. Now we're going to quick wipe down, and I'm cleaning my valve stem, so I'm going to go ahead and use like general purpose grease. Should be good enough. Something that's something good and thick on there. Good nice layer of grease. And now with that on there, we're gonna attach our. Next time I'm going to put the grease on after I do this part. So that's on. Now let's go ahead and put our valve stem back on. Our valve stem, I'm sorry, our valve spring and these retainers that used to lock this in place. We're going to just clean up, and then we're going to just drop these into place. It's easy to get them even and then get them to push down. This block of wood underneath my stem. and you'll see it sit into place like it did. And then after we do that, we're going to loosen up, clamp, and just make sure this sat right, it's not bucking or anything like that. And that's how we're going to do our valve stem seals. So just do that on all the valve stem seals, and then we'll get this everything else cleaned up and get both of the heads done, and then move over to the gaskets to the engine block. Got the 2018 Hyundai Elantra. We're doing the rear shocks on this, and as you can see, pretty straightforward and simple. We've got 2 bolts up here, and then we've got the bolts right here on the side. We're going to take off all 3, and it should just come right out. And then we're going to use the jack to jack up this just a little bit, because we might not be able to get it to reach otherwise, because this will fall ever so slightly, but not enough to need to be supported with the shock off. So let's go ahead and get these 3 bolts removed. So we got bolts removed up top. I've got the bolts started right down here. We're almost finished that. Simply stick it on back on, like so. As you can see, this just comes right out. Now let's get our next one put in. So I've got my jack placed right underneath. So you can see ever so slightly, we're going to raise it up. Now we are in place. And we've got 1 bolt placed. Second bolt is going to go like so. And let's go ahead and get these put down into place. So you can see, I'll get them locked down into place, and then we can drop the jack. All right, we have it tightened down on both up top and the one on the bottom. Now with that done, let's get the tire put back on, and we'll do the same thing to the other side. And that's how you change your rear shocks. If you guys like this video, please comment, like, subscribe, and comment below what you would like to see next. So here, everything's ready surface wise. I'm tapping my bolt holes to get out any rust, debris, old sealant, anything like that. Helps with getting a nice clean flush new bolt in. And so we're gonna go ahead, go around the block and do this to all of them. And then we're gonna get our air hose and we're gonna blow out all these holes, and then or all the holes we're drilling into with our tap and die. And then after we do that, we're gonna blow out the cylinder heads, and we're gonna cover this when we do it to get no debris in there. So let's go ahead and finish this up, and we'll get these gaskets put on. So with everything all cleaned, I've got all my threads retapped. Went ahead and took my compressor, sprayed out all in here, sprayed out my bolt holes of debris and any water and liquids. because if you have any debris or water or liquid or anything in here, when you start to put your head bolts in, you will crack your engine block from the pressure. And after I did all that, I did one final wipe down on the block surfaces with some, with some acetone. Just really wipe down the surfaces nice and well. Everything that's going to get a gasket on it. And so with that all done, we're going to go ahead and get our gaskets seated, and then carefully put our engine block on. So we have one placed already, and it's going to be placed like so. Ports and all the openings and stuff will be at the top. You're going to make sure all your holes and everything line up right. They go on the dowels. And next we're going to place this one. Don't be stupid like me and drop it, because now I'm going to have to wipe this off really quick. And we can't use any really cleaners on it because I don't want to ruin the sealant or whatever it is that they put on here that helps seal after the engine heats up. So I'm going to go ahead and get this placed on. But as you can see, I just have it sit on the dowels. I have it all lined up, make sure everything's nice, clean, flat, right on there. Everything's lined up right. And then the next process will be placing the head. So I'm actually going to put that gasket up, and we are going to do this first head. So we're going to do the driver's side head first. I'm going to go ahead and clean the surface of the head with acetone as well. And right then we're going to video putting it on. So let's go ahead and get that started. So I've got everything all set. I've wiped off the bottom of my cylinder head, making sure that it's nice and as clean as I can get it. Next, I'm going to position myself a little bit down here, because we are putting the head on. I've got my new head bolts because you don't want them stretching. They stretch once they get old. So let's go ahead and get it set up. Now we want to be very careful. We don't want to disturb our area here. But sorry, this thing is a little heavy. Just one more time to wipe this off, sorry. Make sure that we get all the grease, any oils off of here. We don't want anything tampering or messing with our seal. So I'm going to wipe it down with acetone one last time. It's considering that it is a messy work area and these blocks are very dirty. Now with that, let's get it on. hard. It's hard by yourself. Alright, let's try this one more time. Oh shit. So here we have it placed. I just cut the video because I knocked the camera off. But I was able to get it placed. Just sits right on top. I used every ounce of my strength that I have and made sure they lined up on this side because that's right where the dowels are. And then again up top where the dowel is. So made sure those lined up. And I'm not putting these in yet. I'm just using them as an anchor so this don't go nowhere. And now I'm just going to go through and make sure everything is sat right. And I'm going to put anti-seize on the end of my bolts before I put them down. And then we're going to get them all hand started. And then once they are hand started, I'll show you the bolt sequencing of that. And when that is done, we'll have it down to spec and everything. So let's go ahead and get these bolts with anti-seize and get them all placed in. Alright, so we have this last one. Again, just give it one last good wipe down on the surface of the head side. I've got the gasket side set. See if we can get these bolts out without knocking this gasket off. Alright. This one should be easier since we are closer to the passenger side door and there's a lot more space. So basically this is just like that. And again, set one in the corner, one in the corner, and that anchors us in. And now I want to make sure everything lines up, which it looks good. Alright, I think we're looking good. Now, we're just going to do what we did to this side that we did from the other side, which is using my anti-seize. I'm going to put it around the threads of the bolts. And now we're just gonna drop it in. We're gonna do these all hand tight. Hand tight, and then I will be showing it the sequence to tighten these down to spec. We don't do it often, but also have the foot pounds. Because the foot pounds on these are really important. If you're not careful, again, you crack engine blocks really easily by over tightening them. And if you don't crack the block, then you will mess up your gasket and it'll leak. When it leaks, all of this is for nothing. Now we can take out these two bolts here, put threads and these around these threads, and then I just have one last bolt to put on, so I'll grab that real quick. And I'll pick up and we'll do the whole sequence. So right here, torque specifications for our ram. It's going to be a 6-cylinder small block, and that's going to be 105 foot-pounds. And the sequence for that, so you can see it from the book, it's going to be the opposite of what we did to take it off from earlier. Sorry. Here we are. Cylinder head sequence for a 6-cylinder. Now, we started from the outside and worked our way in when we took it off. So this time we're going to start from the inside and we're going to work our way in. So that's going to be starting from 6 and 5 as being towards the back of the car, and 8 and 7 are towards the front of the engine, the front end of the vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and start closest to the back side of the car on 1 and 2 here, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. So go ahead and get it down to 105 foot-pounds. And should be all set. So do that to both sides of our cylinder heads. I just did my first torque to about 50 or 60 pounds. Doing the sequence where it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now I'm going to go ahead and finish the sequence doing to 105 pounds. But I'm going to go up in increments though. I think my next one's going to be about 80 to 90. And then we're going to hit 100. So I'm going to just slowly torque this down to spec because I just want to make sure everything sits right and I don't want to overdo it right away. So let's go ahead and get this tightened up, and then we'll do the other side, and then next we'll clean up our area again and get ready for our intake manifold. So we have everything straightened up and cleaned. What now is going to happen is we're going to put sealant right here on the corners, and it's going to get a heavy sealant stripped all the way down, and then these get placed right here, and we're going to do sealant little dots down here as we go to help hold these in place. And then we're going to take our intake manifold, and I already have my coolant hose placed on it. We're just going to push the coolant hose down on it and then slowly place it down, making sure that everything is perfectly set and good. So let's go ahead and get this sealant put down. We'll show the sealant and then we'll do the manifold. So it's kind of not the cleanest, but I've got it all set up. I'm probably going to clean that one up. One over here as well. And now it's ready for the manifold to be placed down. So let's go ahead and clean this up and let's get it put down. So with the head in place, sealant is all set, we're going to go ahead and tighten this down to spec. And that's going to be going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So crisscross the same way we did it before. If you're unsure, here's the photo how. And we're going to go back to the beginning. And we're going to find our intake manifold. Intake manifold bolts. Fuel injected 72. Down to 144, and that's in inch pounds. So let's go ahead, torque this down, and we're all set. We went ahead and took a minute, put on our thermostat and housing. Bolts are going to be down on 200 inch pounds, not foot pounds, inch pounds, 200. I got that placed. The thermostat should always tell you which side it's going to be facing, and pretty much the side with the spring. The spring goes down towards the engine. And we got over here, I went ahead and set our water pump bypass hose. You saw from earlier, right before this, I had it already hooked up to the intake manifold, and then I just flipped it upside down, like upward, so it would fit without hitting it. And then once everything dried and got all set, that's when I put the hose on. So hose is on, and next we're going to go ahead and tackle doing our valve rocker arms. So both sides of our head, we have our valve springs there. We have our rocker arms that need to go back on. And if you remember earlier from the video, the rocker arms need to go back on where they came off from. So you need to make sure that you're putting them back on in the same order that you took them off. That one is important. Same thing with the arms and the stems that go down. So the arms and the stems, everything needs to match up the same way that you took it out. Do your best to make sure it goes back the same way. So let's go ahead and tackle that. Here are my rocker arms, stems for them. I got them lined up exactly how they're going to be positioned in the engine. I'm going to give these a quick little wipe down and scrub off. So like things like this where it's pretty gross. I'm not going to get them completely clean, not like I did the blocks. I should, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to give these a quick little spray down with some degreaser, scrub them with a pad, and then, you know, wipe them down and just get a quick little job on them. And then we're going to get them placed in, and I'm going to show you guys how we're going to do that. And remember, as we're cleaning them, do not get these mixed up. This is going to go to the front of the engine. This one's going to go to the back of the engine. That's how I have it set up on this foot right here. So make sure we're paying attention to how we're cleaning it, what we're doing with them. And now let's go ahead and get these set. So we're going to take these. As you can see down here, we've got little slots for them to go into. They're going to go right down there. And they're going to stick in this little slots where they need to go. And then when they get in there, we're going to take this, as you can see, right where the stems go. It's right there. And we got our bolts that we're going to place in. So you can see I didn't really, like I said, clean them very well. It's not really my intentions on these ones. These things will survive because I'll be replacing them soon anyways. So, not much longer. This is just temporary. I know we just like spent all this time cleaning the engine and we're just putting dirty parts back in, but this is a project car and we got projects to do. So let's go ahead and get these tightened down. We can do it to spec. Rocker arms aren't too bad. I always do them about hand tight, just a little bit tighter than hand tight, because you don't want to over tighten them, but also you don't want them loose. So I always like to make sure that I get them nice and tight. And we're going to go ahead and go around the engine on both sides and finish this up, get these arms put on, and then we'll pick up at our next step. All done. Both sides. Everything's put back on. All tightened down. Next, what we're going to tackle is our distributor. As you can see, everything's set right there. Probably should clean up the gasket sealer and everything right there a little bit. Looks like it got a little pushed out. A little messy. Here's going to be our distributor. This end will go right down there. You'll see where it matches up. Right here in this groove was a gasket. Now we're gonna go ahead and put the big one on it. Came with our gasket kit, and we're just gonna replace that one because that one was pretty dry and cracked. Broke off before I even was able to pull it off. So let's go ahead and get this stuff switched up and look back from the earlier video. Take pictures of your distributor and everything. Make sure that we have it set back into position the exact way that we took it off. That is going to be your timing and everything. So if that is not put back the way it was and turned and it's set exactly, then you're going to have problems when you start the engine and have it running. It's going to sputter, it's going to sound off, it's not going to start probably. Like, there's going to be a bunch of issues that come with that. So make sure we're paying attention to this part. So I was testing it out. We're going to need to trim down our gasket sealer that we have sticking out, and then our part of our gasket piece that went on there. I'm just going to have to try and trim that down a little bit because it is covering the hole. Looks like it all sits just ever so slightly perfect right there. So let's go ahead and get this all adjusted and set right. I'm going to clean this whole area up. As soon as we get this cleaned up, we'll get our distributor set. As you can see, I have the new rubber piece on there. And I'm going to get the sides of this cleaned up so everything should fit all nice and snug on there. So distributor goes in next. I went ahead and had markings set on here, but being retarded and stupid that I am, the markings all got cleaned off. So I went back to my video, watched it, and saw that our markings here for our numbers were facing certain ways. I had this right here facing towards this, kind of in between a little bit. This side was kind of towards the corner of the engine. This was probably a little bit more like that, just ever so slightly turned. And next we're going to go ahead and put our bracket on there that locks this down into place so it's not moving. And hopefully we get our timing right the first time. If not, we're just going to have to twist and turn this a little bit. If you're having a hard time trying to set it, if we need to, I'll show that in this video where we're going to put the engine in the top dead center. You can use a timing light to make sure everything matches up right, or when everything's in top dead center, we can set our distributor a little bit easier that way. But for now, let's just go ahead and get this bracket put on the distributor and see where the markings are on the bracket and see if it lines up at all with this, and move on to our next part. So, distributor is in place. Best of where I think it is supposed to go. This is going to be our bracket that holds down our distributor. Just makes it easy to where if you need to adjust your timing and do anything like that, you don't have to do a whole thing to get this bracket off and the distributor to move. But basically, it's going to go down like that. And I'm going to tighten this bolt down, and we're going to hold this into place as we tighten it down. And then that should help place our distributor for now. Again, we're going to double check everything that is timing wise. So the distributor and things like that, we're going to just double check before we start the engine and get everything going. So let's just go ahead, get the wrench on this, tighten it down for now, not all the way, and move on to the next part. Next is going to be our fuel rail. And these have right here, we're going to replace these. They come with our kit. Should be easy to do, and they should, you know, just give a pull on them, you know, whatever it is that you need to do to try to pull them off, see if they start cracking or anything like that. And then definitely, if they start doing that, definitely replace them. And aside from that, we're going to also clean up right here all the way around. That way we get a smoother seal into our holes. So let's go ahead, get these replaced, and we'll video putting it in. So we have this all almost ready to be set, and before we do any of that, we are going to take these off. And throw these off to the side because these are going to go up top. I'm sure we'll have other things that these will hold down as well, but we are going to put them down but not tighten them down to spec or even really at all. We're just going to put them down so we don't lose the bolts and we can secure a fuel rail. And so basically, we got the new rubbers. They're going to go down on the holes on each side. Making sure that each side is lined up before we continue. Give them a little shake so we know. Like that. And now, you're just going to be gentle because these are ceramic. But you just want to push them down to where you see them seat flush, and you can feel these gasket parts get set into place because you'll feel it slide as well as you'll see it. So that all done. Just got to do both hands because both sides got to go down at the same time, but you guys get the idea of it. We'll get this put on, and then we'll just attach these bolts again. Don't put them down to spec or even tight at all because there will be other things that go down on there. So I already went ahead and started my next part where I'm doing the exhaust manifolds, and then clean the surfaces of here as well. Have some alcohol I'm gonna wipe off here. But right here I added on this guy. He's the same as I have on the other side. He just helps guide and set the gasket, and also helps guide and set this, so when we put it on we don't cross thread, we don't mess up anything. So go ahead and take your gaskets, which are these. You're gonna line them up where this part faces towards the bottom. It just goes just like this. Boom. And then we're gonna add on everything else and get it all lined up when we start putting on the actual manifold itself, which we will try to film and make this a part of it. So let's go ahead, get the surfaces cleaned, and let's get this set up. All right, let's get this going. That started like that. And get this one put in. This one's being a little snaggy though. You gotta remember, if it's not going in and it's fighting you, take your time and make sure we can get it in. Sometimes it's just dirty threads, but always take it out and start over. Do not take a wrench out and force it by hand unless you know for sure you have got it started and it's not cross-threading. So that one there is on. And now we can go ahead and put this one on here. And then some of these earlier back I had to actually get new bolts for because I had some break off, so I had to go through and, you know, drill them out, tap and die them out. I have a whole video on how to do that. I did it on this engine, actually, on this side of the engine a while back, and then I had a couple more when I was doing it this time around. So you can go back and look at that video if you need to know how to take out bolts from an engine block or just drill them out completely. And then, so this side is all fixed up, so I just need to grab the new bolt I bought. You can grab steel bolts. You can do grade 8 metal bolts, something that's, you know, that doesn't get too brittle, that can take heat. You don't want something that's obviously not going to be so strong that it's like, you know, going to fuck up and the engine either. So they always say steel bolts, stainless steel, and then grade 8 bolts, which is brass. So just be wise, Google it, learn about your engine and what kind of metal your engine is and what kind of metals you're putting together, because all that stuff, there's all a science behind it. You don't want to put two different metals together, then it infuse together, and then your bolts become one with your engine block. So just make sure you guys are doing your research with this stuff and take your time and look at stuff and look at all the information you can before you make one final decision on it. So we're going to go ahead and get the bolt put on this side, and then we're going to leave it loose because down here we have to put on our bracket. So we're going to get the bolts pulled off for that and get that set up. And then once we get the brackets put on for this and it's all mostly snug together, then we'll start tightening everything down to spec. And I'll pull out the foot pounds and everything that we need to do that with. So let's go ahead and get this bracket part put on and we'll pick back up. Bolts are on. Everything's lined up. Got my other nut there, or not, my other bolt there set up. So what we're going to do now is torque it all down to spec. It's going to be foot-pounds, so 3.4 engines. I believe is right here. Let me just make sure we're good. Alright, so we're right here. Torque specifications, exhaust manifold, intake manifold. Everything's all right here. So our exhaust manifold nuts are going to be at 30 foot-pounds. It says foot-pounds unless specified otherwise. So we're going to do foot-pounds on that. So just go ahead, get that all tightened down to spec. And I always like to do about half of the required torque, and then get them down evenly. And then once you get them down, then go back through and do it the full foot-pound that you need to. That way you can ease it on and, you know, avoid anything crazy that may happen. Next of what we're going to do is our valve covers. Basically, yeah, we've done with everything else. We're going to clean up the surfaces of all gaskets and stuff like that. Clean the surfaces of our heads. And then we'll lay down our gaskets and just get them set but not tightened down all the way. So we'll just get that stuff set up and situated. So let's go ahead and get both sides put on. That's going to be an easy one to do. Shouldn't really have to show you how to do that one. So let's just go ahead and clean up the surfaces and get those placed on. So we have the gasket set. These will be the easiest of all the gaskets we have to do. Now with that on, we've got the surfaces cleaned on both of these. Your cover with the small PCV valve hole goes on the passenger side of the engine. The one with the two holes on them go on this side of the engine. So let's go ahead and get all these bolts set, and then we'll get the other side set up, and then we'll go over the torquing procedure and weight and pounds for it and everything. So let's go ahead and get this started. As we put our bolts on for these heads, you're going to have different bolts that look like this to this. And the reason for that is so you have these little brackets that come off of these things that you're going to just slide on top of, and they go around where the wires go. So as the plug wires go around the engine, these little brackets that separate the wires from touching and moving around and everything, they go around like that. So it's going to be on both sides. So just keep in mind that these bolts will need to go in that fashion so you don't mess that up. So let's continue to go ahead and put these all finger tight on both sides, and we'll tighten that down here a little bit more towards when we're done, just in case there's anything else that we need to move or do, just to be safe. So with this all set, when we get ready to tighten this all down, it's going to be 95 inch-pounds for valve cover nuts. Alright, so with that on, that's going to be the last of the gaskets that we're going to be doing, I believe, as of right now that I believe. Everything else is just going to be just reassembly. So I'll go through and, you know, we'll reassemble our alternator, the brackets for that. We're going to do our AC pump, or I'm sorry, AC compressor, and hook back up everything and flush the coolant system right after that. Change the oil, and we're going to see how she runs. So let's just get to go into doing this last cover of the little gaskets that we have left, because those are the big ones. There's things like this one that we put on with the throttle, but these ones are easy. There's not much to them to set these ones or anything like that. So let's finish up this build. So the next piece that we're going to be putting on is going to be our ignition coil here and belt tensioner. And so we have 1, 2, and 3 on the bottom, and it's going to go right here starting on the head. And I did this pulley on the back side of this, and I don't have anything tightened yet. It's just down enough to keep it there, and we're going to tighten it as we go through and get everything else on, just in case if we miss the part that needs to go on here. So let's go ahead and keep adding on our parts. So next we are going to be doing our bracket. Has a pulley on it, also has mounting bracket is also for the alternator. So let's go ahead and get that piece set. You see right here in this area is kind of where it's gonna sit, I believe, and that piece is gonna be this guy right here. So this flat piece is gonna kind of sit around where your thermostat housing and everything is. We're gonna get it all placed and set and double check on that, so just bear with us. And let's go ahead and get these bolts and everything loose and taken out if we need. But also remember, if you're going to remove these bolts, the reason why I have them left in here is because there are some that are different sizes compared to some that are much longer. So if you're going to take them out, you need to keep track of which ones go where. But until then, let's just try to keep the bolts in place and see exactly where we're going to be putting this guy. So here we have it in place. It goes right over the bypass hose here, and you'll see where it sets up right around there, because we have the arm that brackets onto there. Everything kind of started bolting down besides what our alternator will go on to, which is here and up here with our nut that we have still. And so we're going to go ahead and finish getting this all bolted down and nice and set up. And then once we get that on, then we can start situating our alternator and then our AC compressor. Next thing that's going to go on is our alternator. It's going to be this bolt right here that goes in, screws directly into this piece there. Down here, we're going to have a long bolt with a nut at the end of it that's going to go down right there. So we're going to have to either take a rubber hammer, start trying to get this to fit in, or we might have to get this notch right here. It goes in and out. It might have slid just slightly coming out, so we might have to just hammer that back into place. So let's just go ahead and get this alternator set, and we'll move on to the next part. Got our oil added, made a little bit of a mess, but we're good. And all we're gonna do now is rubber stoppers come on this. We're gonna take these off and add them to our ports like so. And once those get put on, these are pretty simple. They go in the direction that they need to. And the hoses are different sizes, so I'd be surprised if you guys got it mixed up. We're gonna go ahead and put these on, but I'm gonna go back through and make sure that my ends are clean
And then we're just going to get these bolted down nice and hand tight. And then we'll get these all bolted down for the compressor as well. Next piece to go on is going to be this valve here. And it's basically just going to be as simple as placing it right here as such. And that means it'll be ready for our hoses here in a second. These hoses and everything will go on. I just want to make sure we got all of our electrical hooked up first, because our electrical I want to all go underneath, hoses to go on top. So I think our next step will be, I would assume, our throttle body. So we've got that right here cleaned up. We're going to go ahead and double check some of our things on top, make sure we got everything mostly back together right before we move too far forward. So let's go ahead and look at everything we have now, see what spaces look empty, and see what we need to do to fill them, and see what we're missing. With the bolts all tightened down and these two bolts here in the back set, you can go ahead, spin this a few times to prime the clutch with the new oil and everything. And you want to do that with the hoses on. And we're going to go ahead and put back our belt and recharge our line and test our AC and see how it works. And that'll be how you do your AC compressor. If you guys have any questions, comments, anything, just message me, comment on the video, like and subscribe. So here we have throttle surface cleaned. Next is going to be our gasket here. You always check your gaskets to make sure there's not markings that say top or bottom. But we're going to place that like such. And then we're going to get our throttle. We're going to place it as such, right on top. And then bolt it down. And then we'll get the specs for that. So 16 foot-pounds for our throttle mounting bolts. And I don't believe there is a way to do it, but I always do crisscross patterns, so make sure it just kind of like, you know, just sets evenly. So it's 16 foot-pounds on these bolts, and that sets your gasket and everything there. Next we're going to start setting up all of our wires, our spark plugs, and all of our hoses. So let's get that started. So we're going to get ready to pull our harness all the way through to the front, get everything set and prepared to start plugging all back in. But before I do that, it looks like we've lost chunks of our protective little sleeve. So these wires that are all exposed like this, I'm gonna just take some time. I'm gonna go through with some electrical tape and just like secure things up and wrap things up, make sure wires are good, that are all exposed, nothing was damaged or, you know, shorting out or anything like that. So let's go ahead, just double check our harness that we have exposed right here, and just let's rewrap it up. So when we were talking about not tightening down certain bolts yet, this is why. My brackets that were on for the alternator and the AC compressor made it hard to get this wire through, so we had to take it off to be able to get these wires to go down where they are supposed to. And then when they go down here, everything fits all snug, and we're actually able to get all of our wires down. So again, take these two brackets off, and then you're able to get your harness wires behind here where they need to be. So with it pulled through on this side, the harness that comes up marked 3 and 2 because of our PCM, and then these two go together. And then you come over here. I unplugged several of these. The only one that really plugged in was this one right here. That one went plugged in right there. And so we've got this stuff plugged in. We're probably going to be moving some of this around. I might bring this over here, you know, depending on how things sit and lay out, because I know this will be hitting my belt. So we will be adjusting stuff, but this is just to kind of show you where things are going to go and plug back in. Now for the inside, we have all this kind of arranged. We're going to start organizing it a little bit better, but for now we're going to go ahead and get these hoses on, because I feel like they're going to be a little bit more annoying with these electricals and everything else, brackets and all put in the way. So let's go ahead and get this hose right here. It goes to here, over, and it's going to go on this guy. This hose over here, he's going to come down like this, and then he goes ahead and drops right down in our bypass. And then we're going to grab our upper radiator hose, because the upper radiator hose will go through there. And before we do that, we're going to go ahead and get our shroud put back on. That way we don't have the hoses in the way. So let's get the fan cover back on, mounted there, and then we'll go ahead and get all these hoses put back on. So these are still loose. Loosen the rest of it, because the sensor back here, it is almost impossible to get to. You can get to the one right here on the side. That one takes the single wire. This one stops in the center. It goes right there. So we're going to double check, make sure that's all the way pushed down. And we're going to reposition our compressor, and we'll show the rest of the plugins. We're on this side now. We're going to connect this wire hanging down, goes right here. Obviously this part, it's going to go right here on these two, and this one right here. Sorry, these two and this one right here, this part goes. And then once that gets plugged in there, we're going to keep moving along and start getting around this side set first, and then we'll do this other side next. So we have this wire right here. They fed down on this side. It's gonna come right under here, and it plugs right into our ignition coil. This plug I had to replace because of bad wiring, but this sensor goes right here. And then the next sensor goes right here. Next sensor right here. And then this bad boy, we're gonna figure out where he goes real quick. And he goes right here. So all we need to do is just tighten down this, this, and this. And then we'll move on to the next side. So with this, we're just going to follow down, which is just as easily as going 1, 2, 3 here at the ends. We have E. Next will be this guy right here. Next is this guy right here. Next, so this guy here, he goes over and across. Now, we've got to set things like this. Wires here. We have one that goes right here. One that settles somewhere else, like right over here, so right there. So I'll let you know where the big one over here goes. That goes to the alternator, and we'll get the rest of these all figured out right now. So we have the sensor, comes this little one right here, this one here, green wires going to that one. The only one I cannot connect is my AC compressor, because for some reason it does not match up to the connector. So with that, unfortunately, not being able to be done, we're going to go ahead and set up our fuel line here. This goes under wires. Let's get this placed in. Fuel line is set. Next, we're going to get together some of our evap lines. So let's get that next. For our evap line, the line that goes under the car to the fuel tank goes up top. And then there's going to be a plug-in on the back of this. And then that's where our other one's going to go. I believe it's back here. This is why we never tighten down anything quite yet. Because trying to figure out where things go sometimes can be kind of frustrating. So we're not going that far back, we're going right here. That's where our other line will go to. It goes from there, wraps around, comes up, goes in underneath. So we have spark plugs all labeled 1, 3, and 5, 2, 4, and 6. Passenger side it goes 2, 4, 6, 1, 3, and 5. So everything should all be labeled. We got it all here and here. So let's go ahead, get these all connected. once we get these all connected, we'll get our throttle lines connected. And then from there, we'll put our brackets back on and hook up our vacuum lines. And once we are there, we are done with our full engine gasket change. Next is our hose. So we've got these two lines here, which is going to be a throttle line wire and a vacuum hose line. That vacuum hose line connects over with this hose right here, which it goes into this end, and then we will plug in to the bottom right here. As you can see, it would go like this. The throttle line that goes right here, this will feed in through here, like so, connects like so. We'll get it pushed in, but it goes through there, and this will feed onto the back one right here. The one right here from the front goes in through right here, pushes in like so. This one connects like this. PCV valve goes on like so. Boom. Now over here on this side, we're gonna do our brake booster hose, and that's as simple as this hose right here, just being plugged into. Gonna feed it underneath the hose for the fuel line, and it goes on this little nipple right there. Boom. And that's the brake booster hose. So putting it on your fan cover, shroud, or whatever you want to call it, back on. With that, we'll put our belt back on, go through all of our attachments, make sure everything's nice, and then we'll give it a start and see how we did. But that is going to be how you complete a head gasket change on a 97 Dodge Ram B2500 6-cylinder. If you have any questions, comment, like, and subscribe. Everyone's always answering questions besides me, so thanks again, and looking forward to the next big video. Now we are going to drain the oil, replace the oil with fresh oil before we start the engine, as well as coolant. We're going to flush out the radiator and the rest of the system when we get the hoses hooked up.